Hi there, welcome back. In this video we're going to have a look at the signal flow in RAZOR. So the synthesizer section here is actually made up of one big oscillator. The oscillator is what's called a sine bank generator, and it generates up to 320 sine waves and then mixes them together to create one voice. So one voice could actually be made up of up to 320 individual voices. All the sections of RAZOR, with the exception of the dynamic section here, simply work on these partials we mentioned earlier in order to achieve their effect. So the dynamic section is the only pure audio effect in there. There is actually only one sine bank generator in RAZOR, and that's controlled by oscillator 1. Oscillator 2 does not actually have its own sine bank, and rather simply changes the amplitude of the partials that are present. So when we introduce oscillator 2, we're going to look at that later, the effect of introducing oscillator 2 simply changes the sine waves or partials that have been generated by oscillator 1. The stereo effects section over here alters the amplitude of the partials on the left and the right hand speaker independently in the case of the panning effects. For reverb, it adds decay to the partials that simulates the effect of reverb. The dissonance over here, this section affects the frequency ratio of the partials to the fundamental. So with no dissonance, the partials have a harmonic tuning, whereas with dissonance added, this ratio changes and the sound becomes inharmonic. As I mentioned earlier, with the filters actually manipulate the partials in order to achieve the filtering effect rather than being an audio effect. So this is how the signal flows in RAZOR. The outputs of oscillators 1 and 2 feeds into filter 1 and then filter 2. In other words, the filters are in series. This then passes through the spectral clip section up here, then the safe base section, and the output of that is then fed through the stereo effects section here. And finally, through our dynamics section at the end there. The dissonance effects are actually introduced at different points of the chain depending on the sound. They can be pre-filter or actually at the filtering stage, depending on what filter choice you have. So hopefully that's cleared up a little bit how the signal flows in RAZOR, and also how we work with this single sine wave generator oscillator. In the next video, we're going to start looking at the actual synthesizer section separately, starting with the voicing section. So see you then.